The Key to the Indian by Lynne Reid Banks, Chapter 23, Patrick's Bit of Fun. I do remember well where I should be, and there I am. These are the first words Omri heard when he opened his eyes, and it was a long time before he heard them again. When he did, he remembered them and realized that his father, in his shocked, dazed state, had said a line from Shakespeare. It didn't sound strange at the time, it sounded quite right. They were where they should be, sitting in the car on Peacock Hill, looking through the windscreen at the sun, which was 5 hours travel higher than it had been a split second ago. And for several moments that was all they did. Then Omri remembered. He had hurt his shoulder and moved it. The pain was still there. He thought of the ogre, squeezing his ribs, and breathed deep and felt it. He remembered he'd been wearing buckskin leggings and moccasins and a breechcloth, and now he was dressed in ordinary clothes. He remembered that, before he'd left, he'd been sitting on a pile of sleeping bags, and had his feet on a box, but those had gone. "They must have been burnt in the fire," he murmured, frowning. Then he turned his head slowly to the right and saw Patrick. He was on the driver's side of the car, standing outside the window looking at them. His face looked funny. Omri couldn't say how, red as if he'd been running, rather shiny. His mouth was opened. "Hi, Patrick," Omri said. Patrick didn't answer. He was scrambling into the back of the car. "Get home," he said. "Quick!" Omri's dad seemed to wake up. He twisted his head over his shoulder and winced. "What's the rush?" "I'll try to tell you as we go," said Patrick. Omri stiffened. He sounded as if he'd been crying. Patrick crying? Please hurry." The key was in the ignition, of course. Patrick had just turned it. Slowly, as if he were stiff and aching, Omri's dad took the spare key out of the glove compartment and used it to start the engine. "I remember now. I'll have to back all the way down, damn." "Shall we walk behind the car, Dad, and guide you?" "Don't bother, I can manage." And he did, more or less, but it was too tense for talking. Several times they ran the back wheels up the side of the narrow track and had to edge forward again, and once they thought they got stuck in the sand, the wheels spun maddeningly. Patrick, in a fever of impatience, jumped out and hurled himself against the bonnet and got them clear. And then they were back on the road. Omri, deeply uneasy, said to Patrick, "Why do we have to hurry? I've lost Boone." Omri twisted his head, ricking his neck. "Lost him? What do you mean, lost him? And Ruby Lou, I brought them back. I thought it'd be fun to give them a boat ride. I found your old coracle. You know that miniature boat thing you got in Wales? It was a bit big for them, but it floated beautifully, and I filled the bath up and put them in the coracle and showed them how to row. I made special little oars for them out of ice cream spoons. The real oar was too big." "Wait a minute. Did they want to do this, or was it your idea?" "Never mind that now, I'm telling you. They got the idea, they were rowing around in the bath and enjoying themselves, and then your mum called me for breakfast. I meant to go back straight afterwards, but there was this program Gillian was watching on TV. By this time Omri was kneeling up in the front seat and gazing over the back of it at Patrick, growing anxiety. "You forgot them? Your mum must have gone into the bathroom and seen the bath was full and just pulled the plug." "Didn't she see them?" "Couldn't have done. She'd have said something." "And the water ran out." "So what?" "So I went back. The coracle was at the bottom of the bath, and Omri just stared at him. He wasn't breathing. Something awful was coming. "And they were gone, both of them." "Where? How could they be gone?" "I don't know, but Kitsa had been there." Omri gasped. His father swerved the car into the side of the road. They were about 100 yards from home and turned to Patrick. "You don't mean the cat had—" "Where? Where has she gone?" "She'd gone back to her kittens, but she'd been in the bath. I could see the paw marks." There was a terrible silence in the car. Then Omri's father slowly turned and drove on. What was there to say? There was nothing to say. All Omri could do was sit there, trying not to see in his mind's eye what he was seeing. "You left them in the bathroom all alone? You left the door open?" "No, of course I didn't. I shut it. I'm certain I did, but your mum left it open." "You left them in there for anybody to find?" "There were just 3 of us, and we were all downstairs eating." "Eating?" Omri said suddenly, "Stop the car, Dad." But it was too late. He threw up. mostly out of the window. Then he just hung there, breathless and sweating, thinking, not Boone, not Ruby, not Boone. No. He wanted to hit Patrick. He wanted to murder him. No, he didn't. He just wanted to be back in time, 200 years before this awful thing had happened. 20 minutes ago it hadn't happened. The sun was just coming up. He pulled his head in and said hollowly, "When did it?" "Just now, this morning. Just before I had to leave to get you back. I ran the whole 2 miles, uphill." Omri's imagination was out of control. He could see Boone and Ruby trapped in the vast, slippery wetness of the bath, running frantically, trying uselessly to climb the sheer sides. With the great monster behind them, he saw Kitsa, an innocent but deadly paw to her killer instincts. An innocent but deadly pawn to her killer instincts, dabbing them with lightning claws. He saw Ruby, the lace of her white wedding dress, snagged on those claws, being hooked into the waiting mouth. He remembered his own fear, his own near fate, in the mouth of the settler. It was too hideous. He should never, never have left Patrick alone with the key. He became aware of the utter stillness of his father beside him. "Was the coracle upside down? Could they have turned it over and hidden under it?" Patrick shook his head. "It was upside down, but I looked." "Where? Whereabouts in the bath?" Despairingly, Patrick mumbled, "I tell you they're gone." "Where was it?" Omri's father suddenly roared. "Right over the plug hole." "Ah!" In a flash he was out of the car, with Omri bewildered, but suddenly, with a pinprick of hope after him, moving as fast as his bad knee would let him, his father hobbled up the path and into the house. He brushed aside Omri's mother, who had heard the car and was coming to meet them, and struggled up the stairs to the front door end. And Patrick came after him. In fact, at the top, Patrick dodged ahead. By the time the other two had reached the bathroom, Patrick was already hanging over the tap end of the bath, trying to poke his fingers down the drain. "Is it big enough? Could they have gone there to save themselves?" "Easily." The drain pipe was old. Like everything else in the cottage, it was open. It didn't have the usual metal fitting in its opening to stop things going down, but Omri's father picked something up. It was a little round metal thing, like a tea strainer. "Your mother always puts this in the mouth of the drain when she lets the water out," he said, "to stop hairs and things blocking it. But, see, it's been moved." He picked up the coracle, a round black toy boat, about 5 inches across, made of wicker, with an oilskin cover and a wooden seat. He looked at the boys. Hope was stark in his face. "My bet is, Boone got himself and Ruby under the upturned coracle and edged it down the bath until he was over the drain. Then they moved this strainer out of the way, and down they went, fell or jumped." Patrick looked as if his knees might collapse under him. "You mean they might not be dead?" "I mean they might have escaped from Kitsa, but if they did go down there, they could easily have drowned." "Lionel!" They all spun round. Omri's mother was standing in the doorway, a look of hurt bewilderment on her face. "I thought you were rushing up here like a madman because you needed to go. Don't I even get a hello after 2 days?" Omri's father and Omri rushed to hug her. "Sorry, Mum, it's just—" But of course he couldn't explain. Omri's dad leapt into the breach. "Patrick told us he dropped my watch. Ah, yes, down the drain. He's terribly upset. Sorry, darling." He gave his wife a contrite kiss. "Well, okay. So how did it go?" Omri's dad looked into her face, then looked away. Omri got some faint inkling of how extremely difficult it is for two happily married people to keep secrets from each other. It was, he said with a helpless air. "It was absolutely fabulous, Mum," said Omri. His mother gave him a big smile. "I want to know everything," she said, "every tiny detail. Come on down. Why are you limping?" "We had a bit of a fall in the mist. It's nothing." "Oh, good. As to Patrick's watch, how could you possibly drop it down there? I put the strainer in. I know I did." There was a silence, then she sighed. "Boys, I don't know. Come on, then," and went out. "What'll we do?" whispered Patrick. "First thing," Omri's dad whispered back, "you must call down there and see if they answer. Then drop a weighted string and see how deep it is. After that—" He shrugged. "I'm sorry, I have to go," and he limped out, leaving the boys alone. They called down. Nothing. They dropped a string weighted with a toothbrush. It went down about a foot, then stopped where the pipe bent. "There's a good thing," said Omri. "The water goes down very slowly. Mum's always complaining about it. If they jumped, they would have landed in water in the pipe, and it would have carried them down the pipe quite gently." "If they could swim." or were clinging to the paddles you made. The boys went to the window. They could see the pipe running down the outside corner past the kitchen. There was an open drain with a grating down there. Maybe they're there. Maybe the grating caught them. They raced downstairs and round to the back, but there was nothing on the grating. It had big spaces between the bars, it had great big spaces between the bars through which two tiny people could easily have been washed by a downflow of water. Then what? Where would they go? Into the big drain? We're not on mains drainage, said Omri. All our wastewater goes into... Oh, no! Leaving Patrick to follow, Omri raced into the house. His father was in the kitchen with his mother, who was just handing him a mug of coffee. Dad, the septic tank! Omri had no time to think about avoiding his mother. All he could think of was Boone and Ruby Lou in the ghastly sewer tank under the flower bed in the front garden. Nothing mattered except getting them out, if they were in there, if they were still alive, not devoured or drowned or asphyxiated or frightened to death down there in the vast echoing, smelly darkness. His father literally dropped the mug of coffee, which shattered on the tiles. He grabbed his wife by the shoulders. Stay here, he said. Don't come out. Then he was bolting past the boys through the front part of the house and into the front garden. At the edge of the central flower bed he halted. A crowbar, he shouted. Omri, fetch that iron rod I cleaned the culvert with. For a moment Omri's mind was a blank. Then he remembered seeing it across the lane in one of the bays. When he returned with it, about 10 seconds later, he found his father and Patrick struggling to lift the heavy manhole cover with their hands. They could barely shift it.